Live yet? No, meeting information.
You see it?
Encrypt. Yep, it's already live stream already.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Strengths Finders Singapore Network. Today's session is what we call Quick Connect Live. So Quick Connect Live is an informal discussion of topics that we kind of, just throw in as and when we encounter it or our members feel is interesting. So we run this session on every alternate Tuesdays, exception for like Christmas and Chinese New Year where probably nobody will be around, right? So that's kind of what we do. And typically there are three of us who anchor this session. So it'll be myself, Ethan, and Jeffer. So I think, do we want to introduce ourselves? We could, right? So quick introduction. I'm a Gallup Certified Strengths Coach. So I do coaching, profiling and stuff. So I love that. I have a full-time job. And so I do all this on the side because I'm really passionate about it. And as we start to do this, we actually started this whole Quick Connect Live thing in COVID period, where people started coming online and we just wanted to create conversations and create a body of knowledge, right? So that's how we started. Ethan, intro?
So I have no certification. I don't have a degree, but I've been doing business consultancy, culture things. My specialty has always been on the human relations part of things, right? So right now, my thing, which if you see here, is The Office Matters, Tom, which I'm solving office politics, and I'm actually having a talk tomorrow about this, and I'll share more at the end of this session.
Jeffer?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Jefford. I am actually working as a learning and design specialist in a civil service sector, pertaining more towards leadership lah. So I'm certified not in Gallup but in genetics, but also sort of a key areas of focus is also on resilience, and that's sort of my cup of area of research lah. Right, back to Alex.
Okay, cool. So we were expecting a good number of people today. So instead of our usual go round, I decided that we will try to use a polling software like Mentimeter and stuff, right? So let me just share my screen and then you can see what couple of things.
Yeah, so it's easier, hopefully. But if you take too much time to share your screen, it also takes the same amount of time. Like kidding.
Yeah,
Sorry, I just like jabbing at. I just like jabbing at Alex a lot. You will start realizing after you come for more sessions.
Yeah, why you always like that? Sorry, I'm trying to find my Safari, which is missing. Okay. Sorry, I was trying to do something. Okay, so couple of things. One is a very quick introduction. So today's session was about this thing called attachment styles. And how I came across it was that I was realizing for my own relationships and people, I tend to be quite clingy with people, right? So Ethan and I, sometimes we talk about it, can be with my godsons, can be with my close friends. And I realized it has been a pattern. And one day I was talking to a friend who is a social worker, and she used the term secure attachment, describing some relationship. So I was like, what's this attachment thing, right? So I got interested. I went to research. I went to started to read a book, and most of the information that you see today that I'm going to share comes from this book, right? By these two authors, Dr. Tim Clinton and Dr. Gary Sipsey. And personally, I thought it was quite enlightening for me. I thought it'd be an interesting conversation. For those of you who have maybe not even seen what attachment styles are about, this would probably be a good segue into it. And then, you might want to dig a little bit deeper about what your own styles are and what can you do about it. Okay, so let's start with this. First thing is, I'm going to try to use this Swift polling thing, right? So you can pick up your phone or you can use the computer. Just go to this place called swiftpolling.com and enter this number 21388. And what I'd like you to do very quickly is just write one word that describes how you're feeling today. And I shall do it myself too.
It takes a while to join.
Okay, this is the first time I'm trying to use this app, so we'll see how that goes. Okay.
Well, who's slightly tired here?
Yeah, no, that it's the space for people to be honest, right?
No, it's okay. Imagine.
Ethan is me.
So I should send you some coffee some way.
Oh, don't worry. After talking to you guys and everyone else, I should be more motivated and excited.
Oh,
If
Then
I
you
see
should start sending a lot of coffee. The tired word is getting bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of coffee already.
okay. I see a number of people are actually feeling quite tired today. Okay, so we'll try to increase the conversation. There is a segment of presentation up front. Then we will go into more discussion mode and see how it goes. At any point of time, if you have questions, you can, if on your phone or on your app, there's a Q&A section. You can actually type your questions there, right? So we can use that and just roll with that. All right. Okay, so I'm going to move on to this. So this is what we have done. This is how we're getting started. Okay, so this is a very short curation of the content from the book that I'm going to share, and we'll see where that goes, right? So what is the fundamental issue? What is attachment theory, right? So when we are born and we start to make sense of the world, we have to answer these fundamental questions, right? Are you there for me? Can I count on you? Do you really care for me? Am I worthy of love and protection? And what do I have to do to get your attention, affection, and your heart? So these are questions of attachment, and it is usually about the child and the caregiver, right? So, and these are formed in very, very early years. So the imprint period is probably between 1 to 3, but beyond that, you can continue to start making sense of the world by answering these questions for yourself. Okay, so what is attachment? Attachment is an overarching system that explains principles, values, and emotions of relationship, how they work, how they don't, and how we feel when we are the one that we love the most. So it starts off with parent-child, and then as we start to grow older, it actually overflows to every area of our life whereby the relationship is significant. So it could be a spouse, it could be parent-child.
Even with your boss.
Attachment issue with bosses.
Yeah, no, there are people
okay.
with like who have abusive bosses and stick by them.
Okay, that's interesting. That's also provided that for some people, they actually start seeing the bosses as almost a parental figure, right? Right. So we accord a certain image to them, and then it then defines the kind of rules and emotions that we have on them. So Stephanie is trying to say something? Okay, maybe not. Okay, so shaping our view of ourselves and those we hold dearest. These are just some quotes I saw, right? So unthinking confidence in unfailing accessibility and support attachment is the bedrock on which stable and self-reliant personality is built. So for a lot of us, if we find that we have certain challenge, right, even in our self-efficacy, even our self-image, a lot of it could stem from our attachment styles or how we see ourselves or how we see other people in relation to ourselves. So the earliest relationships are profoundly important. They literally shape the chemical processes in our brain responsible for how we control impulses, calm our strong emotions, and develop our memories of our early family life. So I think what this says is that our attachment styles, the way that we answer those questions for ourselves, eventually lead to even our triggers. So it's chemical responses that is responsible for how we control impulses, right? So when we relate to someone, suddenly we have certain thoughts about the person. We have a certain story that we tell ourselves. So I'll get into that a little bit more once we go into the different types of attachment styles. So the story of attachment comes when the child oftentimes gets separated from the parent for whatever reason, right? It could be that the parent is not able to give care, or the parent doesn't know how to give care, or the parent is not ready to give care. There are different stages of separation that a child tends to go through. So the first stage is protest, which is get angry, throw temper, things like that. Then they start to despair, they start to get depressed and stuff like that. And then finally they get to detachment. Detachment is, the parent can come to the child and the child doesn't even bother about the parent. So that's kind of the three stages of separation. So when someone is repeatedly wounded emotionally, they aren't about to let themselves get hurt again. So what happens is they develop this system of replacing things for relationship. So for some people, usually the avoidance style, they tend to look for things that replace relationships because they do not think people can meet their needs. So if we trace back the genesis of addiction patterns back into our lives, this is known as the replacement defense. So the theory behind this is that more often than not, people with avoidant attachment styles, I'll get into that, will replace things for relationships, and that is the basis for a lot of addiction patterns that these people go through. They tend to be addicted to something. Even addiction to work is a form of addiction as a replacement for relationships. Okay? So, the behavioral system, from about the 6th month of life, children begin asking some critical questions, right? And they are there. Is my mom close by? Is she available to me? Can I get to her quickly? So on and so forth. And these questions reflect what we call the proximity principle, which is how close, how available our caregivers are to us. So the child believes that the mom is close enough, they feel safe and secure. And with this secure, she's willing to enthusiastically explore the world around her. If, however, they believe that the mother is not close enough, not the proximity principle, right? The behavioral system turns on, and the attachment behavior results in trying to get the mother and child physically closer, right? Okay, so now if let's say the caregiver isn't around to provide the care for the child at a very young age, then we start to have this thing called fear of abandonment, which is a fundamental human fear. And it's so powerful that it activates our autonomous system, and it actually creates a physical sensation in us. So what happens is that we tend to, the last sentence, right? We tend to act on it. I'll feel a sense of panic until we regain that sense of security. So what are some of the defensive behaviors, right? If the parent repeatedly fail to respond to a child's attachment behavior or the need for attachment, you either get ambivalence. So ambivalence is when you get mixed feelings, right? You kind of want, and then you're angry at the same time. So it occurs when the child desperately clings to the parent and yet wants to punish them for having left her. So they did an experiment for testing the level of security, right? The attachment style of a child. So what they do is they place the child, they separate the child from the parent. They do something else, right? And then after that, they will observe when the parent comes back in contact with the child, how does the child respond? If the child sees the parent, very happy, goes, cling the parents, normal, that's secure. If the child starts to see that, look at the parent, run to the parent, whacks the parent, like some kids does that, right? They hit the child, hit the parent because they're angry, and then clings on the parent. So that's ambivalent, right? It's like they're angry and then they still want the parent at the same time. Avoidant behavior is when they kind of ignore the parent. Parent come, hey, hi, how are you? Then do my own thing, totally ignore you. So kind of detached, right? Because the belief is that the caregiver isn't able to meet the needs of the child, and the child therefore finds something else to replace it. Therefore, the addiction styles that we were talking about. So ambivalence and avoidance, right? So these are the two things. I'm not going to read off directly. Anything to add, Ethan?
Can I
No,
interrupt?
Jeff, yeah.
Yeah. I was first, I think I was first exposed to attachment theory many years ago, and I was watching a BBC documentary called Child of Our Time, hosted by Robert Winston. And there was this particular episode that talks about this. So they're basically following these kids for all the way from birth until they're 20 years old. In fact, this year they just finished the series. So this episode that I saw many years ago, the experiment you described is called, I think it's called the strange situation experiment. And there was this really heartbreaking sequence where basically they were tracking those kids and their parents. The parents were going through a divorce. So, and it was very drama. So the kid was feeling the effects of the parents' divorce. And what happened was that, when the mom left, after the mom left, and then the mom came back into the room, the kid saw the mom, starts moving towards the mom, and then halfway suddenly turns around and walks away. And the scientists actually have a term to describe this. It's called approach avoidance, and that's what you describe as the avoidant attachment style. Really heartbreaking when I was watching this happening in front of my eyes, even though it's on TV.
Yeah, and it feels it's quite heart wrenching, right? When you see it's like the child kind of detached from the parent at a certain age, and then they learn to build those defensive behaviors that starts to come in.
Yep, that's right.
Which will follow them to the rest of their lives.
But hopefully it can be changed.
Okay. So the book, let's talk a little bit about it. I'm not covering the whole thing because that would be the whole content of the book. But I thought for today's session to introduce the whole idea and also for us to start thinking about what is our own attachment styles and how does it show up. So that's kind of how I envisage today for 1.5 hours.
I think what I don't know what your next questions are. So there's one question I would definitely want to ask, which is before today, how many of you actually heard of attachment styles and actually read the book or did anything with it before?
Okay, thank you for reminding me.
Yes.
Okay, so if you go back to
yes,
the
I
Swift
knew
poll.
That's what I was looking for. Okay, Ken, thank you.
Okay, so if you go to the Swift, go back to the Swift poll, to your where you are, just key in whether you have it started. Okay, sorry, it has started.
Yeah.
Okay, so just go there and just click. What is your level of knowledge of attachment styles right now? Okay, we are actually split quite down the middle.
It's either you know a lot or you know nothing.
Okay, so for those of you who have not heard of it before, this is a platform whereby we share. For those of you who have read it and studied it before, please, like JF, just chime in so that we can create this as a conversation. I'm not expert in this. I'm learning about it myself, but I thought it's an interesting thing to learn about as we start to approach our relationships.
Yep, I think it's very useful to actually. So I've been also working on some relationships attachment style. So the interesting part about this is if you notice, you go back first. Yeah, the people are still answering there.
Yeah, I'm just checking my next quiz.
Okay, Ken. Yeah, but the key part here is that a lot of people might flip onto the other side when they're on the other side. So this is what I noticed. Some people who Dorothy, feel free to jump in anytime. I'm just sharing my thoughts and then you can jump in anytime. But my experience with attachment style is that a lot of people do opposites of the same attachment style depending on the situation. So ambivalence also comes as part of the large picture of this, right? Like a lot of ambivalence.
You mean the couples, is it?
Whether it's a couples or one of my favorite examples about this is how there are people who like to be with somebody who treats everybody else like trash, but then them is very special. But fail to recognize that afterwards you become the rest of the people to this person's eyes, right? And then so the relationship deteriorates and the attachment styles become very avoidant based, or very abusive because avoidant, or ambivalent, meaning hold you close and then whack you, which is something that a lot of people don't think about. So I think it's very important that people look at what the attachment styles are like and the tendencies are and how it presents in different formats before we can look at what your attachment style is.
Yeah. So I'm going to describe a little bit about what the 4 attachment styles are based on the book. So I know, Ethan, you have a slightly different definition of the attachment styles. So let me go through that. Then the next question is I'm going to ask you to assess for yourself what do you think your own attachment style is, right? So that's interesting piece. Okay, so these are the defensive behaviors. And how do we develop our core beliefs is that over time, these interactions becomes internalized and then we basically have a model of the world, right? And basically, this is what the authors call this attachment style. So there are two core sets of beliefs, right, that will form a quadrant. I'll show you in the next slide, in terms of how do you form these beliefs and attachment styles. So the first one is the relationship or belief about yourself, right? So am I worthy of being loved, and am I competent to get the love I need? Then the other set of beliefs forms the other dimension, which is the beliefs about the other person or the caregivers or the significant relationship. Is that, are they reliable and trustworthy, or are they accessible and willing to respond to me when I need them to be, right? So when you look at this and you put them together, this is what it looks like. If you have a positive belief about yourself and other people, that you are worthy of love, you can get love, people are able and people do care for you, you have secure attachment, right? If you believe that I'm worthy, I can, people might not want to give me, but people are not able to provide what I need, right? Then you usually end up with the more avoidant style. However, if you have a belief that other people are able to give you or care for you, but you feel that you are not capable of being loved, or you're not able to get the love that you need, or you're not worthy of being loved, then we end up with ambivalent, right? So you think that people are capable, but they may not want to care for you because you are not worth it. Then you get ambivalent attachment styles. But if you have negative belief of both yourself and others, then you get what they call disorganized or chaotic, right? So sometimes you exhibit avoidance, sometimes exhibit ambivalence, and it kind of flip-flops and moves around, and it's therefore disorganized. So these are the four types of attachment styles. Okay, shall we go to the next one first? Then we can get everybody to guess. So based on this, it's very, very, very basic, right? Just your beliefs of yourself versus your belief of other people. What do you think are your own attachment styles? Right, so do you feel that you have secure attachment style, ambivalent attachment style, avoidant attachment style, or disorganized, chaotic?
And for people who have done self-work, please go to before you did self-work. Because that's the usual default. Because like, for example, Alex, you probably are not so anxious, ambivalent type anymore.
I'm ambivalent. So I realized that when I was, it is hilarious, right? So I was reading the way that I relate to even very, very close friends. And I journaled when I was much younger. And I realized that my pattern of reacting to people whom I feel insecure because they go out, they find new friends and stuff, it's the same. After many years, I go like, wow, I have the exact same thinking process as I had when I was 18.
Mine changed a lot, so especially over the last year.
No, I think certain things changed, but then certain things were still there, right? So it was interesting because when I read my own journal, it was like, wow. Okay, so majority of us are either secure, ambivalent, or avoidant. Interesting. Okay, so for the secure ones, awesome, good for you. For ambivalent, avoidant, not all is lost, but it's important to recognize that you do have a certain attachment style, and it leads us to certain behaviors. So for me, right, I think Ethan, you'll be aware that as an ambivalent person, I end up becoming more clingy towards the people I care about. So my close friends will go like, reply me, answer me, what's wrong with you? Why can't you meet me? Okay, so things like that. Let's move on to the slide.
Alex, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Because this particular model depends on the belief about ourselves and also the belief about other people. And in different relationships, the other party is a different person. So it could be that one person, you could be in a relationship where you feel more secure. The other relationship, because the other party is a different person, you could be in a different style. Is that even possible?
Yes, it's actually quite normal. Because we have, as adults, as children, you only have like one or two primary caregivers, but as we grow up, we do develop relationships with a lot of different attachment figures. That's what they call attachment figures.
Right.
And for most people, we do develop a multitude of different attachment styles when we're with different people. But usually there is one dominant style.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing that.
I think it's possible. Excuse me.
Oh,
It's possible that we start off with ambivalent avoidant, and then we learn to move towards having a more secure relationship with someone that's significant to us.
yeah.
So,
Can I just share a joke?
Yeah,
sure.
go ahead.
Well, it's funny to me. I don't know whether it's funny to other people. This is from, I think, one of the Marvel superhero movies. The Spider-Man. I think it was, can't remember which one, but I remember Spider-Man was trying to send a lot of text messages to Tony Stark. Do you remember that?
Ambivalent.
Yes.
Yeah, so he was just being very clingy, lah. And then the other guy, Happy, I think he received all the text messages.
Yeah.
He was just ignoring Peter Parker.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
avoidant.
Yeah, that's I think it's very interesting, right? Because if you see some people, they will be they'll be ambivalent towards a person at the top in terms of power, and then avoidant towards people below them. So Happy in that scenario, because Happy is very stuck to Tony Stark also. So it's quite interesting because that's why we also talk about this. Like we have, the thing is that that's why I'm also not sure what the book says, but because I see the behaviors change according to different people they deal with, it's also very strange because again, it's a lot of question marks because it's not a hard and fast rule that everybody does the same.
I think attachment theory applies more towards people who are significant to us rather than the run of the mill. So the closer or the more critical that relationship is to us, the more likely our attachment styles will show up. So I think even for ambivalent, we don't end up going clingy with every single person that we meet, right? Only the people who we have deemed as significant to us.
But I mean, this is the interesting part, right? Because they will also talk about. I thought they also did talk about. I think in the later days, where in all their research, they talked about the people that the other side, what kind of style they seem to be comfortable with.
What kind of
An
style?
ambivalent person might be actually comfortable with an avoidant person versus another ambivalent person, or is like what kind of. There's some people with
that's very interesting. I've actually read a dating book about that.
Yes.
You're right. The ambivalence and the avoidance do tend to attract each other because they kind of like compensate for each other. Sometimes it can be very stable for a very long term, but because both of them are classified as, both of these styles are classified as insecure styles, there's a lot of drama in that kind of.
It depends on crisis lah.
So the interesting thing is that book actually talks about it and gives examples of people with ambivalent and avoidant. So what happens is that it actually, if the person doesn't know how to have good open conversations with one another that results in secure attachment, it can actually spiral negatively very quickly. So the ambivalent person will go like, why is this person ignoring me? Why is he closed? The avoidant person just doesn't deal with emotions, right? Because they shut down. They're not even comfortable with their own emotions. That's typically the behavior of avoidant attachment styles. So the more the ambivalent person clings on to the avoidant person, the more avoidant that person gets. And the more panicky the ambivalent person gets.
I find it funny because I'm looking back at my history and going like, I've actually played all the different styles before. So I'm like,
I came across another book which describes these two as pursuer and distancer roles in a relationship.
Yeah.
And it seems that most guys are distancers and most women, although there are a lot of, exceptions, most women do tend to be pursuers.
Oh, I don't know. I definitely I function as both, so I don't know.
With the caveat that for most guys who are distancers in the early part of the relationship, they kind of flip over to become pursuers, but they will stabilize and become the default distancer role for the rest of the relationship.
Interesting. I think this discussion is very interesting because I realized that again, right, it depends on time. So the question here then that I do have to ask Alex, because you read the book, what do they say within the book about like the changes in behaviors and the tendencies when it comes to this kind of stuff?
I think, okay, so not so much the disorganized one, because this organized is like a combination of both avoidant and ambivalent, right? So for the avoidant one needs to learn to put their needs out to people and have other people meet those needs, because they no longer believe that other people can meet those needs, and therefore they cut themselves out. So the avoidant person needs to also be willing to share their feelings, because the avoidant, the ambivalent overshare feelings. The avoidant goes like cuts off all the feelings, right? Don't deal with it, don't share. And if I recall correctly, they go as far as to say that the avoidant style people tend to be afraid of their own feelings of anger, feelings of vulnerability, and things like that, right? And therefore they lock everything up. So they are not able to deal with their own feelings and not able to deal with other people's feelings and so on, and therefore they avoid. So a good part of the avoidant attachment style people is they need to learn how to deal with that degree of feelings and share with people, and also learn to open up themselves to have other people meet their needs, be vulnerable, right? So that they can eventually get to the secure kind of relationship.
Yeah, Dorothy wants to share something, if I'm not wrong. Dorothy?
Yeah. So I just thinking about this avoidant behavior. We have a friend, something like this. We have a group of us. This particular person will be like this. Quite often, we will say, hey, we want to have a gathering. This person will always say, I can't tell you yet until last minute, So wait. Finally, the person that they say, I can't make it. All right. But then we persuade and say, come lah, please come. Then the person will show up. All right. And it happens all the time. And then after a while, we like, do we still want to entertain this behavior? She will always say, no, not sure. And then at the end, you got to beg and say, please come. Is that avoidant behavior that we are talking about?
It does sound like avoidant. And avoidant people also do tend to be very commitment phobic. And it shows up not just in dating and relationships, but also in friendships.
But of course, over time, the person had come to recognize that the group is very accommodating, and we persuade. We just try to understand why is the mix like this, all right? So
I think that in the long term, if the group can make this person feel that her needs are being met, then she will feel safer, and she will want to spend more time with the group.
Okay. So our avoidant behavior shows up like this lah.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about both the avoidant and ambivalent, all the three insecure attachment styles, right, tend to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the avoidant, like you just described, right, after a while you go like, should we still spend so much effort? And then you stop, right? And then a person go, see? These people cannot make what it means. So then it becomes a self-reinforcing belief kind of thing for each of these attachment styles, which is why it's so sticky.
Everything is a self-fulfilling prophecy if you think about it.
We kind of, even the ambivalent one, right? We create the conditions for ourselves by being too clingy, because when we're too clingy to people move away from us.
That's why I hold on even harder.
Yeah, so I hold on harder, then eventually they squeeze them to death. So, it's like the closer we try to get to people, the more they need space and the more they move off, and the more you try to, then the whole cycle goes off, right? So that also reinforces the ambivalent attachment style.
And therefore ensures that people will leave them. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, hence, therefore self-fulfilling, right? So the awareness of our own attachment style then becomes important, because for me, when I realized that, shit man, I need to give people some space, then I go, okay, how much space is enough space? What do I need? Where else can I go and meet those needs and things like that? So it's really a lot more of recognizing my own attachment style, and then how do I modulate and how do I manage it? Why are you laughing?
No, I just had a burn statement for you, but I'm not going to say it, so it's okay. I know you too well, Alex. It's okay.
Thanks for not saying the burn statement live. Okay, so jialat leh, wherever I work with this guy. Okay, so let me move on. Attachment injuries, right, occur in times of stress when we expect someone to be there, but the person is not there. So what happens is that becomes attachment injury becomes a hurt that we keep inside us, and then it creates things like anger, anxiety, grief, and all sorts of kind of negative emotions. Okay, so when can attachment injuries result? So some of us might look back in our lives, right? Might or might not be aware, because it could even be pre-memory stage, right? So it can happen when the caregiver or loved one is not available physically or emotionally due to their own emotional distress or discomfort. So they themselves are not available, or they themselves have attachment styles like avoidant attachment styles, right? And then it passes on. Caregiver is willing to be available but not able to be there. So sometimes legal, divorce, and things like that. Caregiver wants to be available and would normally be there, but is absent at critical developmental phase or during time of crisis. So it's a specific time. The parent or loved one is there, but instead of providing a safe haven, uses insensitive, off-putting, embarrassing, sarcastic language towards needy child. So this happens when a parent thinks that a child shouldn't be needy, right? Even as they start to grow up to a certain stage, or when okay, so I'm not expert on this, right? But they also spoke about some people, when the kid is there and the kid needs something and it's trying to get attention, and the parent starts to put the kid in place because they think that the kid is just whining or just throwing a tantrum. So that kind of parenting style can also cause attachment injury, which was interesting, right? So I'm trying to figure out that one.
Can I just share something that happened in the 80s?
Yeah, go ahead.
So in the 80s, right, there was a style of parenting that became very popular, which is to leave the baby to cry when they're crying.
Yeah,
stop crying.
I read something about that, but this was about the Victorian era, and it's quite tragic.
Oh no, but this was like a book written in the 80s where there was this pediatrician. Again, there's a reason why I don't really like books. I like reading books, and I don't run to believe any books. It's because a lot of books give a lot of bogus information, and this was one of the books that told parents to treat their children by training them not to cry when they're hungry.
There are good books and there are bad books, lah.
Every book is biased. Just recognize that. They're all useful, but this is where I think it's very interesting, right? So we look at this.
So you learn not to trust books,
I'm avoidant towards believing too much in the books. I believe
you have avoidant style towards books.
Yeah, I believe in using it and then using your own experiences to see whether it works for you. But that's more important, right? I think that's what we can say.
But I think it's interesting, right? Because let's say there's a parent who doesn't know better, right? Goes to the book and starts to not meet the needs of the kid who's crying. The kid starts to develop avoidant attachment style. Again, starts getting detached. So the kid does stop crying, but that's not a healthy thing because the kid actually stops believing that the caregiver is capable or willing to meet those needs.
Yes.
So you still get the outcome that you want. The kid probably stops crying, but it's in the long run actually more damaging to the kid than.
So it's a false belief system, which again, right? Like a lot of us look for obedience. I mean, this is where it comes back to this, right? Like I recognize that a lot of this comes back to, do you want a kid to behave? So this is why in Asian context, and I would say, right, from my own observation, we do quite a lot of injuries in the format of the way that we try to control. Whereas in Western context, it is usually due to neglect that I notice in terms of tendencies, right? So in Asian context, it's usually over mothering, over parenting, that causes injury in a certain manner. And then very often on the other side, there's a certain form of neglect because they say kid needs to stand up on his own or her own or this kind of stuff. So it's really about a balance between both sides rather than either or. And I think that's why it's very important that we also talk about this and think about it.
Yeah.
I came across... Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I came across an interesting perspective regarding all this, the different attachment styles, coming from the context of adaptation, meaning it really depends on the context of the environment, because each of the attachment style is is adapted to suit particular environmental conditions. If you grew up in the Middle Ages, for example, where parental care was not really that available, so therefore actually the avoidance style is appropriate for that kind of context. So, and each of the attachment styles is appropriate for a particular kind of environment, and it really depends on the context. In our modern era, we say that the secure style is the healthiest, but if you change the environment, it could be that the secure style is not that appropriate or useful.
I think this is where I might disagree with that statement, only because of the one very simple thing. For me, secure means lack of attachment, meaning I'm healthy about it. Like, to me, that's what it means when I read the subtext of the thing. So secure means I'm comfortable whether or not. So I think secure is like the universal ideal, but the easier one to go to is avoidant or ambivalent, and therefore it's suited to certain environments. Because to me, secure means I can be close to you, but also can be distant from you. Can. Doesn't mean I will. That's just the way I will read it in a different kind of subtext.
I have a question. Yeah. So you all are sharing about the attachment injuries that can result when the caregiver or parent does this and that and so on. So can you all share a little bit more about as to what, let's say for these particular ones, what is the result of the caregiver being this or that or so on? Is that something you're going to go on to in the next slide, or?
I have a couple more slides on attachment injuries, but I think Denise, what you're asking is how to appropriately give care to a child. Is that the question?
Or maybe flip the other way around. Is like, say, if your parent handled you in a certain way, whether intentionally or unintentionally, what is the outcome that you could have perhaps inherited from the way that you were brought up as a child, and how does that influence your attachment style today?
Okay, so the two sets of beliefs were the starting point. I do talk a little bit about that from the book. So the book does go more into that. Then after I run through the slides, then we can, discuss that a little bit more. Is that okay?
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So after a while, I also can't remember exactly what I put in. So before I go to that next slide, the last part, right, like what Ethan was saying, in terms of over-mothering, right? So over-smoothering. So that's what the last one is. So when the caregiver is there and does safety and protection, and doesn't allow the child to explore, that actually does cause attachment injury as well. So think about like helicopter parenting. That actually does damage to a child, right?
Yep.
Another
way of putting it is intrusive parenting style. And I'll just add a little bit here about attachment systems. Attachment system is a thing that can be observed through your attachment style. I came across in a book that in addition to an attachment system, right, human beings also have a complementary system called the exploratory system, which enables us to go out there and learn things. And it's only when the attachment system is healthy that the exploratory system is able to function properly, like in a more healthy way.
That sounds like what the ideal of secure attachment is. I'm just saying, like, that sounds like what is.
There's a view that the avoidant style is also very good at exploring.
Oh,
yep.
So I think when you talk about how secure attachment works, is that when the child grows up, the child goes to the caregiver for comfort and security. And then when they feel comfort and security, they go out, run, explore the space to a certain threshold or certain distance away from the parent. Then they feel insecure, they come back to the caregiver to regain and rebuild their security and then start exploring further. So it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That allows them to eventually grow and internalize that security, right? That allows them to go out to the world and explore even further. So if I recall correctly, that was kind of the process of how secure attachment actually helps the child to grow up to be more confident, more exploratory. Yeah.
Yep, according to the book. Very cool.
Yeah, great point. It's like, oh, can I remember everything that I read in the book, you know, that kind of thing. So, okay, let's see.
You're doing a great job, Alex.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, Alex, I just want to say there's one season, right? Like my generation, I'm the boomers, boomers. Many of us grown up without our parents around us, all right. For me, I'm fortunate because my mom was operating a provision shop in the house. So my mom is in the house. My dad is coming home every day, right? But for some friends, right, they are taken care by their grandparents.
They could have secure attachment with them. I mean, then their primary caregiver then also helps to create the attachment style. So some do have secure attachment with their grandparents.
It takes a village.
Yep.
It takes a village. So my question is, while you say the caregiver, in most instances is their parents, but there are instances where they are not parents, they are grandparents, or some are not even grandparents. Some could be, you know, a foster parent or a nanny that the parents have employed the person to take care of. I do remember one incident, my own niece, my own niece was sent to a nanny to take care of. She come back every night sulky, you know, every night sulky. We also don't know what is it, right? So after a while, we think something is not quite right. Then we went to find out that actually the nanny had many children to take care of. She doesn't pay attention to my niece, all right? So we took her out lah. We took her out after that, all right? So I'm just want to talk about this is when you talk about caregiver, sometimes the caregiver are not your closest ones.
But okay, so the caregiver tends to be the primary caregiver, like a parent or even grandparent, right? The nanny sounds like babysitter.
But they are with them the longest hours, like when the parents are at work, so like 8-10 hours.
Childcare? Like childcare that type.
But childcare is one-to-one, one-to-many lah, huh? It's very corporate, right? But this is
but
like
your nanny also one-to-many, right?
Yeah, also one-to-many. But it's also when we talk about caregiver, this person is not really like a loved one.
Maybe I can share a bit more about what Dorothy is saying. So basically, my parents are divorced when I'm young. So I actually go to a nanny place to stay from Monday to Friday. And I only return home on Saturday and Sunday. So that's when in the view that I would actually see my nanny as the caregiver.
Yes.
Because I'm with them, 24 hours a day for 5 days. Yeah. So I think what Dorothy is trying to say is that, besides the parents or the grandparents that take care of the child, there are times whereby, they can actually hire a helper that stay in the same house and be with the kid 24 hours. Or it can be sending them to a nanny's house to take care of the kid and then only fetch them back on weekend.
I think there were also instances of the son or the daughter, like the brother or sister above them became the parental figure, the caregiver.
Yeah, that is true.
So I think the key part here is I don't think when we use the word parent, it is the parent role, like meaning biological parent. As we notice, is foster parent. It's emotional parent. I think that's a better way of describing it. Yeah,
emotional parent.
Yeah, emotional parent, because that's how we form our relationships when we're young.
Today I saw an article on Quora about this guy who has a dog, and when the family had to go on a vacation, they put a dog with a dog sitter. 1 week later, they came back. The dog was like sulky, don't want to look at them. And took a long time for the dog to, become close to them again. So I don't think this is exclusive to humans.
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about this in animals, right, where they have surrogate parents of a different species, of different things. I mean, again, brain formation, very similar in terms of our high brain. A lot of our basic primal instincts are very similar. So if we talk about that, absolutely, I really, really agree with that statement.
Okay.
I think the other thing is that the transition is quite important. Like if let's say the child is not with the parent, right, and he or she is taken care of by the grandmother or somebody else, what the child believes about this transition is quite important and impacts their attachment style. So do they believe they are abandoned, or what kind of beliefs they start to adopt?
Yeah.
I think the narrative that's given at the time is really important, and the narrative reinforced later on is even more important as to whether the person will turn out possibly secure. I think this is also where I don't think it's possible to get away from attachment injuries. As a parent, I don't think any of us can be perfect.
Okay.
There's no such thing as no attachment injuries. True? Yeah. So I think this is where I think the explanation and narrative, like Pei Ling just mentioned, is so essential.
And I think when we talk about narrative, it's not just what people tells the child or the person, right? It's more of what that child tells himself or herself.
So it's a mixture of narratives. It's a mixture of narratives. That also depends on who they believe in, who they are actually attached to, whether the parents act like they're lying. You know, there were stories about how when a parent is crying, but then telling the kid that she is happy, right? Like that is then the kid relates happiness with crying.
I think the kid just gets confused. That's invalidation.
Yeah, it's a very strong invalidation, but relates it. So then it becomes an attachment injury on its own also.
And they start to believe that there's something wrong with themselves. You know, my parents don't want me. That's when this kind of self-belief sticks for the rest of their life sometimes.
Yep.
If they're not aware of it.
Absolutely.
I don't know whether I should be sharing this, but I know a guy, his parents had a very troubled relationship. And one day his mom told him that before he was born, the father wanted to leave her. So she made herself pregnant in order to keep the father from leaving. And she tells that to her son. Attachment injury.
Ayo, that one will cause major rejection.
So he's got this narrative that he's actually not wanted, that he's only serving the purpose of preventing the father from leaving. And in the end, the father did leave anyway.
Depends on the narratives you want to give, right?
Yeah, then it's double whammy also, right? Then the kid goes like, my mom didn't really want me. My dad left anyway.
Yep.
So, couple of things lah. Okay, I'm going to go a bit further, a bit faster. So, so attachment styles and vulnerability to soul wounds, right? It creates a way that we view our relationships and usually future relationships. So secure attachment styles believe they're worthy of love and their caregivers are able and willing to meet those emotional needs. So they are best prepared to avoid and quickly repair damage inflicted by attachment injuries. AKA, they are not the people who start expanding stories in their head and making a mountain of molehill. They are more able to confront when they see something and then to get the thing out of the way. Whereas people with insecure attachment styles can be hypersensitive and they expect to be betrayed or abandoned because in their past, supportive figures have repeatedly let them down. So what that means, because when I think about it, I go like, yeah, I'm kind of hypersensitive lah. So most people. Okay, but that being said, my parents, that's the thing, right? I know my parents care for me. I know my parents love me. So I go like, so where did this come from? Yeah. So
we talked about your
brother. Okay.
Yes.
So you know, things like that lah. So I know that I tend to be hypersensitive, and I also know that with my hypersensitivity, I jump to conclusions about people, and usually it paints them in a not very positive light, or it could be I interpret a certain behavior as a rejection when it's actually doesn't mean anything. It's just a normal behavior for a person. Yeah. So that is why when we have expectation to be betrayed or abandoned, we start to form a narrative in our own heads about people's behaviors, and we start to give meaning to those behaviors. And for me, my understanding and awareness is that, hey, this could very well be due to the attachment style that I have. Okay, so if you're going to do a comparison of the attachment styles, this is what it looks like. So the secure believe that they are worthy, they're capable of love, and then others are willing and able to give and love them. Ambivalent believe that they are not worthy of love and support that they need, and they are not capable of getting it without being angry and clingy. So become more angry and clingy. Other dimension is that they believe people are able to, but might not because of our own flaws. And then others are trustworthy and reliable, but might abandon because of my own worthlessness. So like, very sad lah. Okay, avoidant, they believe they're capable of love and capable of getting a love, but they believe that other people are unwilling or incapable or not trustworthy. So you do everything on your own. Disorganized is just the combination of all the negative things for ambivalent and avoidant, which is then sad. I guess one of the things that I thought was even sadder is this thing at the bottom, right? Others are abusive and I deserve it. So these people actually expect to be abused because they think it's normal for them. It's quite sad.
Yeah, and if someone comes along who is loving and not abusive, that is like a totally alien and unfamiliar condition, and actually makes them feel threatened, and they will run away from love.
Hence avoidant.
I actually argue on another ground that I've not met a single person who actually has properly sought healthy, secure relationships at all. I have met so many people, helped with so many relationships, worked with so many different types of people. Not a single one has been based off purely healthy. So to me, everybody's on the spectrum, right? As much as there's the 4 categories, I think it's on a spectrum, and I think it is very nuanced.
It is a spectrum, yeah.
So okay, so every time we do a profiling tool or whatever, right, I realized that a big part of it is for understanding people, but more importantly, understanding where we are so that we can work on ourselves, right? I mean, we can say that this person is avoidant or whatever, this person needs to discover for himself and learn. But then the question is for ourselves, how do we respond and how do we build something healthy for ourselves? And that's always my starting point.
I think that's beautiful, and that's exactly the mindset behind Strengths Alchemy, which is your meetup group, and I think this is one of the key things that we need to re-emphasize, right? Like, it's not to tell other people they're avoidant or tell other people that they're ambivalent. It's for us to reflect upon ourselves, to work on how we can move towards secure attachments. So a lot of startup people I know are highly avoidant. They're very money driven. They're very goals driven. But then they build really, really bad relationships along the way, right? So there is all this kind of tendencies, but because the world kind of validates these behaviors, they think it's a good attachment style to have, for example. I literally have people who will say that it's perfectly fine that I'm abusive because I'm making the money. So it's a again, it goes back to the narratives that people want to play. For me, at the end of the day, it's always going back to how can I be more secure in the relationships I have in my life, rather than going, I'm avoidant, I'm ambivalent, just the way that I work, which is the other part of the game.
Yep, agree. And I think the other thing so first and foremost is about discovering for ourselves and where we are. Then the second one is more of like, even when we understand where the other person is coming from, it helps us to accept the other person and not judge the other person as much, right? So I mean, even for Clifton Strengths, when you start to discover, oh, this person has a certain talent team, we learn to appreciate that talent team and not judge the talent team, right? So I think the same thing about attachment styles is, look, if we start to recognize that the person is displaying avoidant attachment style, it's because this person has a belief that other people are incapable or unwilling of caring for this person. Right. So once we appreciate that, what can we do about it? And I think that changes our mindset of how we relate to people, right? And to me, that's important.
My struggle, I love what you're saying. I just met people who don't believe that.
Yeah. And then it's like, how do you deal with it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I've got 10 more slides. Okay. So attachment styles and regulating emotions. It's not just a theory. It's about theory of emotion, which is how we do emotions, how we feel, right? The fear, the anxiety, that panic, when we start to have the narrative of people abandoning us or that people are not willing or able to meet our needs. So I think I got three or four slides on this one, right? So secure attachment in terms of regulating emotions is what it looks like, because they have a positive view of themselves. They expect others to be available and worthy. So the expectation is important. So they don't avoid deep, satisfying relationships and willing to accept risks involved in loving another person. They handle their feelings the same way. They aren't afraid to feel powerful feelings like fear and anger. So they feel fear and anger. They use it to inform themselves of why they feel that way, and then they deal with it. right? They don't run away from it, they don't stick to it, and things like that. So, there is, right? They use it to help them make decisions and motivate behavior, but they aren't ruled by their feelings. They live according to Tyler's Willard's dictum. Feelings are good servants, but they are disastrous masters. So they know what it is, they feel, they manage, and they are informed by it. Avoidance. So for those of you who have selected avoidance, this might sound like you. They tend to keep people at a distance, avoid true intimacy, and value success and power over relationships. Exactly, Ethan, what you just said, right? For some startups. They are quite prone to addictive behaviors, which serves as a substitute for intimacy. So we talked about people with avoidance styles tend to replace intimacy with addictive behaviors or other things that they, could be, it could be other addictive things like drugs and stuff, right? But
gambling, drugs,
gambling, work,
yep,
workaholics, right? So they tend to keep feelings at a distance and work to deny or repress any negative feelings because they feel that they shouldn't feel negative feelings. And therefore, parents who repress negative feelings, like you cannot feel bad, cannot feel angry, can cause this kind of feelings as well. So they're prone to feeling empty and hollow inside because they avoid intimacy, and then they use addictive behaviors. Now, there you go, pornography, substances, workaholism to help them feel alive. Ambivalent, those with ambivalent attachment become entangled in relationships with lots of ups and downs and excessive concerns about rejection and abandonment. I'm laughing because I think it sounds like me. They have difficulty setting boundaries with others, which also sounds like me, and may confuse themselves with those of others. So, because of becoming so entangled, I think the psychological term is called enmeshment, right?
Yes.
Right. So we become more enmeshed with people. People.
How to spell that? Sorry.
I'll type it in enmeshment. Hold on, I'll type it. Yep.
Is it the same as merging? Or is it
no, enmesh is like it's so interweaved.
Well, yeah. Another way of thinking of enmeshment is as if two people have merged together. The boundaries between their identities have become blurred.
Yep, quoting Spice Girls with two become one. Okay, sorry.
Bible also says two become one. Okay, so so I think we need to so in secure relationships you need to be individuals, but they need to be united as one. So enmeshment is a terrible thing to have, and sometimes people mistake enmeshment for empathy.
Oof. And the whirlwind romance kind of thing, very often it starts with enmeshment.
Right.
Yeah, where you're so tightly interweaved that it's so hard to separate the two of you.
I mean, that's potentially part of courtship, right? So,
ideally, it shouldn't be. So that's the other part of this, right? Like we actually portray enmeshment and unhealthy behaviors on television as romance.
That's interesting. I never thought of it that way.
Then people get the wrong expectations about how relationship should be, right? Then they would end up getting disappointed when it's not supposed to be, not the way that their expectations are supposed to be.
Interesting. So maybe we can talk about that for the next Quick Connect. But it's never thought of it.
Hey, maybe next session we should quick connect on like certain clips of very unhealthy attachment styles that are being highlighted as good things on television.
Okay. I will leave that to you.
I'm thinking about dopamine.
Look at Korean dramas.
Sky Castle, man. Sky Castle, the worst of that kind of behaviors.
Okay, I'm watching Korean.
Oh yeah, I saw that one. I saw the Sky Castle one. Yeah. Which particular one are you talking about? The enmeshment that is not quite right.
The parenting style, the control, and then the enmeshment with the coach. Because the coach tells the kids to run away from their parents, which is avoidant attachment style. You need to do your best so that you can leave your family altogether. That's how she convinces the students to work very hard for their studies.
Yeah. Okay. So
that leads to one of them killing another student. So,
yeah. Okay. Quite messy lah. That one is okay. Oh, now I see it better now. So there is attachment injury in the first instance because the kid doesn't feel secure with his parents, because the parents' expectation was you must be top grade to be a doctor.
Yes.
So study hard. Then they employ this coach who enforce that same idea.
Yes.
Your parents are harming you. They only want you to be good for their sake. Something like that.
Yes. Wow. Perfect.
Right.
I love the analysis. That's very well done.
Oh, okay. That is
Okay.
So it's,
For those of us who have not watched it, Ethan, please go get a clip and share with us.
I think it's a good movie to watch. It's a good movie to watch. I was surprised.
It's a series. It's a very long. It's
series,
a 20 episode series. So yeah.
But you won't stop Once you're on it, you won't stop. It's just
I cannot take watching this kind of shows. I had emotional reaction to the movie called Uncut Gems, which has very similar to avoidance style attachment style that I cannot take. Like throughout the whole movie, he's just avoiding real issues whole way through. For the 3 hours worth of a movie, he was just avoiding having proper attachment. It's just annoying.
Interesting. Okay, so let's move on. Ethan, maybe in the next round you can help us get some clips.
I'm curious why it triggers Ethan so much. But anyway.
Right, yeah. It'll be interesting to see what that clip is.
Okay.
Okay, so here we are, right? The last segment. Ambivalent attachment styles, they are consumed with whirlwind of emotions, whereas avoidant attachment style over-regulates, ambivalent styles under-regulates emotions, allowing normal healthy emotions to mutate to more intense, destructive, and self-defeating outbursts. Some of the word choices are quite funny, right? So it's like, oh, okay.
It's also from a different era before X-Men became popular. So
I don't think it's that old book. Okay, so if they have disorganized attachment styles, they bounce back and forth. So sometimes look like avoidant, sometimes they look like ambivalent. So those with disorganized attachment styles might also be overwhelmed with feelings from the past, right? So that's what it looks like.
I feel like most people are disorganized, but there's a predominant something else, and then that's why I say it's a spectrum.
Okay, I hear you. Okay, so end on the slides, but I think we'll be having a lot of discussions really. We kind of know what our attachment styles is, but I think now just to open for discussion in terms of what we just shared, attachment styles, injuries.
What happened to all the polling?
This one is free.
Yeah,
free
what
chat
happened to all the polls? I thought there are more questions that you had. Let's check for questions first before
My next question is, what are your personal takeaways?
Okay, so it's the ending. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the share. For everyone here, what are your thoughts over the attachment styles that we just shared? And do you see it affecting your important relationships with other people? Anyone?
Yes, for me, all the way through.
Want to elaborate?
So I've always been ambivalent, or under duress, I actually go to avoidant. So I've actually recognized how actually reading this, right? Because like you said, there's predominant styles, and to certain things I am ambivalent, and there are certain things I'm very anxious, avoidant. So I think one of the major things about this is that when does it come out? What it comes up with? I grew up mostly being ambivalent in romantic relationships, or I also chose very ambivalent. Okay, but the other part is I tended to go for anxious, the avoidant partners who then became ambivalent with me. So which was very strange when we think about it in some sense. I'm trying to figure this one out also. So they are avoidant in their previous relationships, but ambivalent with me. So these are the things that I was trying to, that's why I'm also having a lot of struggles with the attachment styles being fixed, because I noticed there are a lot of different changes. But I tend to be ambivalent. When I was growing up, in the last week or so, I finally let go of my savior side, which means that I lost a lot of my ambivalence. Thankfully, hopefully. I've already watched the differences in the way that I built my friendships and my relationships around me for the last week plus, even in the way I talk to people. I think that's very important. But ambivalence as the I need to be important in this person's life. I need to make sure that this person needs me. I need to make sure that I have done all this for this person, so that I know that they want me before I make a foot forward. Was my ambivalence.
Ethan,
so that's the needy part.
trying to make sense of what you just shared. I'm just thinking that because people probably behave differently in different stages of a relationship, and the person could be reacting to those different phases of you. You know, it could be triggering different attachment styles. I don't know.
Fair. No, so
It's
then,
just a theory.
no, that's quick. That's very cool. So attachment child styles can be triggered. That's interesting.
No, I mean, I know from reading one of the books that adults, as opposed to children, do develop multiple attachment styles to different attachment figures. So if your behavior in different stages of a relationship are quite distinct, then it's possible that she could be reacting to different types of attachment figures in her life in the past, from her past.
I agree with that.
I'm also thinking whether it's possible that, like, I don't know what you call it, right? Maybe like a phantom attachment style, right? So let me give an example. Okay, don't laugh. Okay, so for example, ambivalent attachment styles, right? You have an expectation of people abandoning you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So for some, we will cling on more tightly. For others, we abandon it first to avoid being abandoned. Right?
Yeah. Is this avoidant or ambivalent?
So I think it's ambivalent, but the behavior is motivated by the fear of abandonment, right?
Yeah, but because a lot of the book also talks about behaviors, so it's like it's a little bit confusing, right? Like it's like, so what is your behavior? I mean, if we talk about motivation, there's a lot. I know people who are avoidant because they're ambivalent in the first place. They want to cling on, but they don't dare to, so they avoid. Then how?
So the root of that is still an ambivalent attachment style, right? The belief, if we go back to the core belief and all this, it comes back to that fear of, okay, so what happens is in their heads, or people with ambivalent tend to under-regulate emotions, right? So it becomes more intense, it becomes bigger, your mouse become a dinosaur and things like that. So because the mouse looks like a dinosaur, we run away from the mouse. And the behavior, someone else looking at it, goes like, oh, the person is avoidant. But what's actually the narrative, right? You go back to the narrative. The narrative is actually an ambivalent narrative. So I think it's more important to go back to not just looking at the behavior, but if you can actually get down to the narrative of the motivations of why the person responds that way, it will give you a much deeper insight, right? So the avoidant person doesn't ignore people because they are afraid of abandonment or because they are afraid that people won't be able to meet them because of their worthiness. It's more of people are just lousy and incapable. It's
but
not that.
That's also an avoidant behavior, isn't it? You choose to cut people off before they cut you. That is an avoidant attitude, isn't it?
Yeah, but the belief is because you think that you are not worthy.
So the origin is a different reason, right? So there is. So so on the other hand, so this is then, is it a serial monogamous kind of story? Maybe. So I'm talking about this as like I know serial monogamous, meaning people who jump from relationships to relationships, 6 months relationship, go to next relationship. They seem avoidant, but the truth is they're looking for the next attachment because they fear that the person will always abandon them, so they run away.
Something
but
like that.
they always need that attachment anyway. So maybe the key part here is what they go towards when they're not attached, or what their tendencies are in that form. Then there's a more accurate way of looking at it.
Yeah, I think.
Talking about a lot of the ambivalence and avoidance, I wonder if you all heard of anchor, island, and wave. It's actually in the book Quiet for Love by Stan Tuck. So they also talk about all the different for attachment style. But basically, an anchor is someone being secure in their position in life, and they can actually
change other people to train them to be more like them. Whereas Island is someone is very independent.
I know which book you're talking about. Yeah, Emil Levine.
Yeah, so that one is actually really very interesting. That's how I came to know about attachment.
Yeah, I think that book is not complete though. The theories from that book, I feel, because I've read that book and then I've read a few others, I feel that book is incomplete, and that book is very biased against avoidance.
But actually, it classified avoidance and avoidance under waves, whereby they are actually sometimes want to be very close to another person, but there are times when they want to be alone. So they keep like a waistline moving back.
Sorry, Faith. Your voice became very soft because the truck came by.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, but basically, I was saying that the waves are sometimes they feel very secure in their position in the relationship, whereas other times they don't want to be close at all. So that's why they are considered a wave, whereby they actually move back and forth between their emotions.
Oh, that's ambivalent, huh?
Actually, that sounds more disorganized than avoidant, no?
But the word ambivalent means two impulses.
Yeah.
Oh.
But I think that would actually help to create the line between ambivalent and also avoidance, because it sounds to make fun. Because we are discussing why is it that sometimes ambivalent can swing over to avoidance when facing certain situations. Yeah. So that's why I thought.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you for that, Faith. Anybody else have any thoughts? Or any questions?
So Denise, you had some questions earlier, right? Were they answered?
Yeah. So because earlier on we talked about the if a caregiver or a parent is a bit insensitive and then they don't recognize your needs and they make you feel small and stuff like that. I think that was one of the pointers on the slide. So what kind of attachment style would you get out of that kind of parenting?
Ones that denies the needs of the child, is it?
I mean, like if that parent or caregiver is quite insensitive and kind of puts the child down or embarrasses the child, that kind of thing, which does happen, right, from time to time. So what kind of attachment style would that kid develop over time?
I don't know whether there's any books particularly written on this. JF, do you know of any books particularly written on parenting style and attachment style of kids?
Would you repeat the earlier part of your question? Because I took a toilet break.
So if I can repeat the question to see whether I got the question right? If a parent tends to kind of undermine a child's confidence or in certain manners, is there any way of telling what kind of attachment styles the kid would turn out to have?
Yeah.
I suspect probably avoidant, because then the kid loses confidence in the parent meeting their emotional needs.
Okay. I think it could be both, Okay, so let me explain why.
Could also be. Yeah, you're right.
So the earlier one, remember there's one segment that talks about over-smoothering and things like that. So basically, do you cause the person to doubt their own self-worth and ability to be loved? So the narrative becomes both ways, right? Like what Ethan says, it's both their internal narrative as well as external narrative. So if the impact on them is they start to believe that, no, nobody loves me, I'm not worthy to be loved, there's something wrong with me, then they could lean towards ambivalent, right? But if they go like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with me, all these people around me, they're all crap and stupid, so there must be something wrong with them, they're not capable of loving me and I'll just do everything on my own, then they become avoidant. So I'm not sure if there is a if you do this, you end up with this
There's
behavior.
No fixed pattern, I think.
There's no.
How is the kid being undermined?
Yeah, I think that question is very good. I think, let me just extend this a little bit more, right? So everybody has met spoiled kids and trust fund kids and all these kind of people, right? They can turn one of two ways that I've noticed. One is super hardworking, say, screw family wealth, I don't want any of this, I will work it my way. And a little bit avoidant towards family, right? They don't want to deal with family issues and whatever. The other one is I'll just depend on their money and be happy-go-lucky all the way through. So this also goes into, like, if you look at attachment styles, right? One towards the family is super attached and ambivalent and clinging on. The other one is screw all of you, I don't want any of you. So if you look at it, this when I looked at it and I was looking at all the different reactions, right? Like over mothering and sport kids. I think one of the major things about this is what I saw, at least for myself, is what is prized by the parents or the parental figures as the most important thing, and what makes them valid is how they undermine it would really decide a lot of the attachment style. Because the kid will absorb what the parents would do. Like kids imitate their parents between 3 to 4 years old, starts adopting the values of the parents, and in that adoption, if it's confusing, I go back to this term called schizogenesis. I talked about it all the way back. There's this term called the double bind. Depending on how it works and which side you side, I think it will turn out to be a certain style. I think this is a very complex model to explain fully, but perhaps we can explore a bit more in the next round. But I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. But because what I noticed is same parenting style turns out completely different for different children, depending on the reference points in which they were brought up in.
I keep reminding myself that human beings are extremely complex creatures, and today we're talking about attachment style. And attachment style is only one chapter from a book which I read, which doesn't just talk about attachment style. It talks about conscience type. It talks about sense of self. It talks about birth order. It talks about neurology, like when a kid very early in a child's life, the neurological chemicals and all that kind of stuff, neurological cocktails. So I think there are a lot of complex elements at play, not just attachment style. So, I tend to believe that it's important to look at all these different influences.
And the other thing I just wanted to add is, we start talking about the caregiver's impact on the kid. At the same time, we also have to recognize that there's no perfect caregiver. So if a caregiver is expecting to I'm the mom, I'm the dad, I need to be perfect in the way that I deal with my kids so my kid is secure, then that would create unrealistic burden on the caregiver.
And then another type of attachment injury.
Poor caregivers, no matter how perfect you are, you will still fail the kid in some way.
No, because it's inevitable. Every kid will have that conclusion in their head because they will be confused about something at the board. There's too many things to teach the kid.
So, that's my empathy number one coming in, right? Just sensing a little bit of the stress and concern and worry coming through. So I'm saying that, hey, look, as we learn about this, it's important to be aware, but no one's perfect. If you expect yourself to be perfect in the way that we deal with, I've lost my temper, I've got angry, berated, whatever it is, might be you, might be someone else. But then I guess the next question is, if it has happened, then how do we recover from it, right? How do we have that conversation to sit down and say, hey, look, this happened just now, and reconnect.
So if you look at the definition of secure attachment, it is you're not uncomfortable with facing the emotions regarding the relationship. So I think this is where, we look at this again, right? The whole basis behind secure attachment is not perfection. It is how willing we are to face the negative issues.
And I think the beauty of secure attachment is that it's perfectly okay when there's anger. It's perfectly okay when there's fear and there's anxiety, and you can deal with it. You don't actually fear that anger. So I guess in some ways, avoidant or ambivalent one is very afraid of the other person. I think it's more than ambivalent, right? It's very afraid of another person's anger and may not be able to deal with it well. The secure attachment one is able to deal with the anger and confront it. So therefore, I think that, hey, why the moving towards a secure attachment style, or at least learning to deal with some of these things that turn up for our own attachment styles, right? Like for me, okay, so those of you who have been following my meetup group for a long time knows that I've been talking about difficult conversations, Dr. Henry Cloud, crucial conversations, so and so forth, right? Boundaries. Okay, so for me, I didn't realize how much it was linked to attachment styles because as I started to work through boundaries and how to have proper conversations with people, I realized I needed it partially also because of the way the things in my head works out, right? So let me give you an example of Crucial Conversations tool, which is about mastering our own stories and also being able to, I guess in Ethan's words, being able to be aware of the narrative. So separate the facts from the story it tells us, right? And that's very important for ambivalent people, right? Whereby we allow the emotions to become huge and big, right? So if I separate the facts and the story I tell myself, I can then say, hey, look, this happened. This is the facts. And this is the story I tell myself. Is this story true? Right? Then now, if I'm able to separate the story that I have, I can now take that story and I can either complete the story by saying whether this story is actually appropriate or not, taking a third person view, or I can actually bring it out and share that story with the other person without it being accusatory, meaning you always like that, you always do it. No, it's like, hey, when this is what happened, I observed this. This is the story I'm telling myself. This is how I feel, right? So the other person that's amazing at this is Brene Brown. If you all have watched her, right? So in Netflix, she was sharing the story about her and her husband in I think their vacation house in the lake, right? And she was trying to tell the husband how much she loved him, and she just like ignored her and just swam left and right. The first time he thought she didn't hear her. Second time started to feel rejected and worried, and she was filming all the way back. And then she went there and she went like, eventually, because she does this whole vulnerability thing, she spoke with the husband, and the thing that she said was, oh, what happened? This. And the story I'm telling myself is this. So, I mean, Brene Brown and Crucial Conversations are two different topics, right? But the approach that they use is remarkably close. So I think that an awareness of whether I'm avoidant or ambivalent now gives me the opportunity to pick up the skills of, and work towards becoming secure, whether it be through boundaries or learning to have good conversations with people, things like that.
I think this is a very nice way of wrapping up before you head over to the learnings for everybody. I think that's where, right? If you see what's universal across building relationships, and we talk about this, whether it's vulnerability, start with why, all these kind of different things, right? One of the things I think is most beautiful that I've recognized is how willing are you to face the real problems? How willing are you to face the emotions of the situation and be honest with yourself? And I think that's what attachment style is also about.
So I have this friend who is also a coach, and then he uses this abbreviation. He says ABC, awareness before change, right? So first become aware of what is, and then we can start to change ourselves and move towards something better. So Ethan, thanks. I think let us start wrapping up by have people share what their personal takeaways are from today's session. So if you could just go to Swift Polling, and if you already have it on your phone or whatever, it should be there, and just enter what are your personal takeaways. If you have more than one, feel free to key it in. Has it started?
Yeah, I'm typing in already.
Okay.
By the way, Alex, I very recently picked up Crucial Conversations, the book, and I thought I also bring up another very useful book. It's called Nonviolent Communication.
Cool, I'll check it out.
Marshall Rosenberg.
Yeah,
I also read Crucial Conversation last week.
Oh, very
it's
cool.
Really quite a great book. And the other book that you all can check it out is daring greatly. It's learning how to be vulnerable.
Oh yeah.
By
Yes.
Brady Brown.
Brady Brown.
Yeah, quite cool.
Brady Brown has a couple of books. It's very, very, very interesting.
That's true.
Oh, and if you have Netflix, go and watch her Netflix video. It's very cool. Okay, is that all?
So few people. I think people are still typing, right? Yeah,
Okay.
look at everybody still typing. Well, everybody's typing. If you're interested, I'm just gonna drop it in the Zoom chat. Tomorrow I'm speaking on this. I'm actually talking about office politics tomorrow at 3:30 to 5. And what we're trying to do is to really identify and have a talk about what everybody thinks office politics is, where it comes from, and what is the root of it. And it's about an inquiry more than a teaching session. It's a discussion for us to really explore why people seem to keep on having this problem. Humans keep on having this problem no matter which era of humanity we're in.
Sorry, I went to click on your link.
No worries, it's okay.
Oh, I was wondering where the sound came from. Sorry, let me stop it.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
How do I stop this?
Yeah, it's done. Whoa, wow. How come it looks like this on your computer? Never mind.
I'm stopping it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, thanks so much for today. I didn't really know exactly how it was going to turn out today. All I knew was when I came across attachment styles, I thought it was quite enlightening and insightful for me in understanding my own behaviors in relation to people. And also, I guess in some ways, when I start to see how people relate to one another, what are some possible reasons why they behave that way? And I thought, actually, I had one more slide, right, that talks about Clifton strengths, but I think we'll skip. I think for those of us who have taken Clifton strengths as a profiling tool, wanted to actually ask, and we can bring it back and ask, go back and ask yourself how the two are interrelated. So there's also what I believe is that our attachment styles does influence how we use our talent teams, or does influence or motivate why we use it in a certain way.
Even though we're both ambivalent, I think individualization and ambivalent comes very closely together.
Yeah, the looking for people so you know how to respond to them and being sensitive, right? The avoidant probably have more the yellow, the self-assurance.
I have both, right? I have both. So what, I'm disorganized?
I have no idea. You tell me. So I think it's interesting, right? But these are all different tools for us to understand people. Like what GF said, right? Humans are way too complex for any one tool to describe or help us understand. But what all of these profiling tools or models do is to help us as guideposts, right? So that as we start to understand this better, we can start to navigate ourselves and our relationships with people a little bit better. And that's kind of how I thought it would be great. Okay, everyone, thanks so much for today. I'm going to stop the sharing. If you'd like to join us for our next session, we haven't quite determined what the topic is yet, right, Ethan?
Well, let's just go into the clips for bad attachment styles that are being highlighted. Like I think it's time for us to have a casual one where we're actually pulling out YouTube clips of like really, really, really bad attachment style being highlighted as a romantic thing or like a good thing.
Okay, so Ethan, I'm going to pass that back to you.
I'll do that. I'm a pop culture guy, so it's okay. I watch movies left, right, center, so it's all good.
Yeah. So let's talk about when the next session is, because after this will be February and it's going to be Chinese New Year. So if there is demand, we might still hold. If not, then everyone, I just want to wish you a happy Lunar New Year. Go play more mahjong and stuff.
Provided you keep it to 8 people.
Yeah, 8 a day, maximum.
8 a day, It's not even 8.
Yeah. It's not
Wow.
8 at one time. Is you have a maximum of 8 unique visitors in a single day.
That's why they have. That's why people are starting having the joke of the counter on the wall on the door.
Yeah, the meme, right? Like
Yeah.
go see doctor. So, yep. So everyone, thanks so much. I think we can end today's session, and I'll see you at the next Quick Connect live session. If you would like to explore some of our other meetup groups, so we have talent showcases whereby we invite guest speakers from all around the world to talk about various topics. So if you're interested in that, it's also on the meetup platform. There is a event fee for basic members, and then for elite members who get access to all the recordings and everything, get attend for free. Then we also have the normal meetup sessions whereby we'll come and we'll run through. The next one that I'm going to go through is basically reviewing our previous year and creating aspirations for the coming year. So those are what's upcoming. Okay, so thanks everyone. I will see you for the next session.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks, guys.
Everyone.